The PodBarber. Coming up on today's show.
I think science seems to sort of throw stuff up that you've never really thought is possible, and even some people say like sci-fi sort of helps to push science forward, and that there is an element of truth in that. A lot of scientists are big fans of things like, you know, Star Trek, because it's obviously set in a human future, but you know, things like the tricorder from Star Trek, you know, where they sort of hold that thing up on your body and it goes, you know, things like that are starting to exist now, you know, like the communicator, you know, iPhones.
You're listening to the PodBarber. I'm taking conversations from my barber's chair deeper, further, and I'm championing the chat. Men's health and well-being takes centre stage. With help from my guests sharing knowledge and experience, stories from their quests, we tackle the taboos. We're all learning together. It's emotional. We're just dudes. So feel the positive vibes we're sending out to you. It's simple. Join my tribe. Subscribe to the PodBarber. You, my friends, are not alone. Who's next, please? Well, I'll tell you who. We've got David Alexander here today. You, my friend, are a very successful entrepreneur and outer space loving oddity who's descended from a supersonic space made for you, transcended in reverse to your underwater verse. I cannot wait to pick your pocket for true. I've been so lucky enough to be in the same cosmos space as you at times in our life when your creativity, your emotions, your talent were hard to table. We ventured together down many black holes, discovering the wonders of friendship and feuds and many, many truths. But above all else, you're just one of my dudes. Great to have you here today on the show and finally reconnect, my friend. It's been absolutely ages, son.
It has, isn't it? Yeah.
So, Dave, one writer to another, I've written you your noodle, so here goes. Lead singer, you're right out there. Aggressive mic love full of flair. The front man to energise the show. Proper hard tunes, you're a forceful glow. Electrically charged, distinct style and presence. Powerful vocals, imagine your essence. But as I mention the invention of you, the time's near the point where you take your pew. You're a man that stares up and out of space. Your love of sci-fi is your happy place. Star Wars and comics, it's true that it's true. So enter my anti-gravity pod made safe just for you.
Do you know what? That was read perfectly. I couldn't do that. That was brilliant.
Thanks, man. The point of creativity, I suppose, isn't it? It's nice to make it, I think it makes it mean something, and you mean something to me.
Oh, that's nice. You should write lyrics.
Maybe, if I could sing better, but what about if someone sings them for me, eh?
Well, there you go.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's always a man behind a good song. Yeah, maybe I should. Or maybe I'll just carry on writing these and meet loads of all of my old mates and get the opportunity to pen a little bit of teller for you and whoever might be listening in. Dave, I really love having you here, man. I want to dive deeper into everything and, you know, what you're up to. But, you know, just how you feeling right now? We're in the middle of this sort of awful situation. How are you coping, son?
Do you know what? Life for me hasn't really changed all that much because I worked for myself and I've been working from home for a good 10 years. So from that perspective, you know, the work side of things didn't change very much. From a social perspective, you know, I've got a reasonably active social life. So that's been kind of tough. There's a great little pub in Buntingford where I live called the Fox and Duck, run by Julian and Lisa, who are really good friends of mine. And, you know, I started drinking down there as my marriage started to sort of come to an end. And it was a real lifesaver for me because I got to meet some really fantastic people. And it's a real melting pot. It's quite eclectic sort of gathering of different age groups and different kinds of people. You know, you get your tradesmen that are in there at sort of 6 o'clock, and then you've got your younger crowd that come in the evening, and then sort of old farts like me, and even older farts. There's a guy called Guy, actually, the guy in Betty. He's got to be. He's just turned 80 actually, but he's one of the funniest people I know.
Good lad.
He's pretty much always asleep at the bar, but when he's awake, he's good value.
We've all had them.
But yeah, I've missed that. It's been a real sort of social sort of lifeline for me that's sort of been cut a little bit, but I still get to see my girlfriend Susie, who's, you know, my support bubble, and I've got my family bubble, and then that's it. Yeah, no, it has been tough, but at the same time, I don't think I've dealt with it quite as bad as some of the other people I know who depend on going into work and, having that sort of interaction with people there.
Good, man. It's good to hear that. And obviously you impart the thing that I imagine most people in their day-to-day lives, they've got this opportunity, thrown at them. You sound like reasonably, respectively, right now that you've made the best of it. You're very thankful and grateful for the community that's been around you. Perhaps in different circumstances, it might have been a different tale to tell. But you sound pretty good. Glad to know that you're okay, man. I really want to send you on a bit of a mission to rediscover moments and those little Polaroid snapshots from the past. And having a conversation like we're going to have right now is a great way to rake over some old pastures and harvest really important pages to the book of you. The difference is you now have the oversight and wisdom to see this past in a more present version of yourself. On that note, Dave, if you had to put a pin in your timeline to knowing that you wanted to be a musician, when was that revelation and how did you move upon it?
I sort of started to like the idea from a very early age, actually. Maybe started to get really into music when I was sort of like about 12, 13. And the romanticism and the idea of being in a band just really appealed to me. The only problem was I was a very lazy individual, so learning an instrument didn't come naturally to me. But I think I was 15. I was at school. I went to Friends School here in Saffron Walden, which I believe isn't here anymore. Is that right?
No, it closed its doors, which is such a shame from an educational point of view. And it hasn't reopened it. I'm not sure what the plans for it currently are, but, when you think of the development and the opportunities, I just hope that the future of the site or what was the intent with what the support around that whole setup was, is that they reuse the finances or the square foot to continue some format of education for younger people. The place is growing, developing, loads of people. We need places. But yeah, it was, it's not, I don't know what's going on exactly.
I seem to remember reading somewhere there was some sort of caveat or something that it had to be some form of educational institute.
I heard that as well, yeah. The caveat that you mentioned is if they phased like a takeover from a development, but the development in turn had to build a more modern facility, like structured, closer to the surrounding bigger school. As long as they work together and it doesn't have to be on that particular site. Not for me, as long as they use that investment and that gift from the Quakers.
Oh, the Quakers, yeah. Yeah, it's a Quaker school.
Yeah, Quaker school.
Yeah. I just think the temptation is too big for developers. I mean, you look at the main building, that's ripe to turn into flats. I mean, the land around the school, like the field, the school field. And
it's mega.
It's huge. I mean, you could build a whole housing estate on that little plot.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And someone can make a lot of money. And, with the greatest respect to local politicians, who I'm sure are all very upstanding and honest people, someone's going to get bunged something, aren't they?
Well, who knows? I'm not here to make those judgments. But what we are here to do today, David, with that amazing deep growl, it's not to discuss the future of the foot space available to us. It's about you, man.
Yeah. So I was at school and there was a school band called Void, and it was a 4-piece drummer, bass player, guitarist, singer. And they were all coming to the end of the 5th form, and 3 of them, the guitarist, the bassist and the drummer, were going on to 6th form, and the singer was leaving school. So one day, the guitarist, Sam, came up to me and went, "So Matt's leaving, we need another singer. Do you want to give it a go?" And I was just like, "Yeah, all right, why not?" And had a little jam with them. They used to have a little sort of area which was under the stage in the main hall, and they had it as a rehearsal room, and it was a very cool little sort of like almost like a clubhouse sort of feel. And I went and had a jam with them, and I was shit. And they were like, "Oh, okay, listen, half term's coming up. Listen to all this stuff and sing along with this." And they gave me Led Zeppelin 2 and some AC/DC and stuff. Yeah, I went away, and that half term I just stayed in my room, like discovering Led Zeppelin, singing along with all these songs, which were impossible to sing along to at the time. And I went back, and there'd been a slight improvement, so they decided to keep me on. So that's where I started off. And school band, we all eventually left school, but the band kept going for a while. but eventually it petered out.
Fizzled out.
Yeah,
but that's really where you sort of like really can structure that sort of feeling. That's the go-to place. That's where it all sort of kicked off.
Yeah.
Obviously creativity, any sort of performing creativity, you know, like talking about it, you know, they're important things like to explore. You know, we're all superstars at the end of the day. None more than you. I've witnessed you, man. So what's your creativity right now in life, and what can we expect from you based on your desire to set the stage on fire once more? Have you matured the message?
Well, from that moment, I was in bands pretty much the whole way through my life up until about the age of 30. The last band being Houston 500. And after Houston 500 sort of split, I was a little bit tired of it all. And I didn't do anything for 15 years. It's only been in the last sort of year and a half that I've started to work with one of my friends from Buntingford, who's got a ridiculously good little home studio set up where we just demo stuff. And it's been brilliant getting back into it, actually. Having a bit of a creative splurge at the moment, lots of songwriting. And I'm writing a lot of the songs myself, which is great because I've never really done that before. Not that I can play an instrument still, but I get the song in my head and then I get the root notes on a keyboard and then I send them over to Reg, my music partner, and we then get together. Well, not during COVID, obviously, but before COVID, we were getting together and sort of banging them out and making them sound like actual songs, which is good. Reg writes as well, but he's got a great ear for hearing what I've got in my head, and we work really well together. So yes.
There's a real sort of cohesion there, and like I sort of pick up the fact that the battle scars from your past adventures with music. I do want to go back a little bit further because I've had various other people in we'll be talking to, and it's kind of a good time to sort of like document. Like there's I heard that I never heard you in this band. I obviously heard you in the Houston 500. We have a massive collection of stories from those days.
Yeah,
I was even almost part of it to a degree.
Yes, you were, yeah.
And the crappiest manager, I think I got sacked. What was it? Did you lot sack me twice, or was it the Great Nothing? I got sacked multiple times anyway, and I kept on coming back. Whatever was the result of it.
I think we only sacked you the once. It's me and Ken.
Right.
Which was really difficult, and I remember it well because I was dreading it, and Ken was with me, and we were in the kitchen at Wild Hedges, the house we used to live in. Because we both lived in that house.
Yeah, man, it's a great house.
And I had to sack you and then live with you.
How bad am I?
And I remember you just walking in, and you were particularly sort of like, sometimes you could be a little bit sort of, Mick and a bit abrupt, depending on what mood you were in. Not that you were a particularly moody person, but I remember you walking in going, Gravid, and putting your hand on my shoulder and just stroking it in a really affectionate way, and me thinking, I feel like such a wanker. But no, you were totally fine about it. You were like, yeah, no, you probably could find someone else that could do a better job.
Yeah, do you know what I'd done? I'd read because I just wanted to be part of it, and like you struggle with musical instruments. Like I had the same sort of thing, but I just wanted to be part of some sort of scene. And like to me, I didn't have my sights set on anything high. I had my sights set on like my mates and those around me, and I could see that there was good stuff, but I could sort of see where maybe I could impact it and maybe try and like organise it. But eventually, Houston 500 got to the point where it was its own machine, and you toured, and and I couldn't. I wasn't capable. I was naive. I had no idea. I was probably just a bit of a catalyst to organise you lot and bring. Yeah, I got the boys involved, and do you know what I mean? So it was more about me. Like being a little bit of a silicon, sort of binding a few things together, and then once you've done that, you don't need to. You re-siliconed me.
Well, I think it just got to the point where I think Houston 500 was just it all started to happen very quickly, and I don't think any of us were prepared for it really. It became quite apparent quite quickly that we needed people in the industry shepherding us through, and actually we failed there because we actually went with another person that actually didn't know anything about managing. And
I think I introduced you to him as well.
No, he was...
it wasnld Old Matey Boy, is it?
American guy.
Oh, no. I was thinking of Coco.
No. Yeah. The holiday expert.
Yes.
No. Well, I knew the holiday expert from school. We were at school together for a little while.
Right.
So then he turned back up on the scene. And
Yeah.
actually, he did, in all honesty, that's our first steps into the bigger world were really sort of down to him a little bit, a very little bit. So after him, we were playing in London. I think it was the Bull and Gate, and there was this American guy. He was writing for a website called Drowned in Sound, and he was there reviewing bands. And he wrote a review of us, and it was an amazing review. It was a really good review. But that night, he sort of expressed an interest in managing us, and I was always a little bit, because he was just this guy. He worked for a huge American company, and I think he was quite high up. And he was taking a year off work, living in London, in Notting Hill, renting.
Yeah, he can support you.
Yeah. And
actually at that time as well, Notting Hill at that particular time, you had Kate Moss down there and it was a proper fusion scene of like amazing megastardom was bubbling around there. So you obviously got your head turned.
It was his enthusiasm, I think, that was the thing. And, we were like, well, let's sort of give him a go. But I think when it came to the point where record companies were starting to show an interest, the deal we actually went for, it was a small label, independent label called Global Warming. That just fell into his lap. It was another band from around here that were already signed to Global Warming, brought Global Warming to one of the gigs and introduced them to me. And then I said, Tom, this is the guy from this small label. We'd heard that, he'd told us that some of the major labels had sort of expressed an interest. We were like, well, how's that going? And he was just like, let's some of these guys. And it was just like, okay, all right. But had we have moved forward, I don't think it would have been a bad move signing to them, because they had a good little roster of artists, and there was the freedom to do it how we wanted to do it. So that was important. But, it didn't go anywhere in the end. So, yeah, they were the three.
You took it to...
The trinity of managers.
I'll take the title as the number one still. And I always call you Gravy Davey. And actually, you remind me that I used to call you Gravid as well.
Gravid, yeah.
And it's not for his love of meat and two veg, I will say that. It's just an affectionate term. It's nice to have those as well, isn't it? The man of many nicknames. I love a nickname.
Yeah.
So it was an explosive time, I think, for bands, particularly that sort of era. And you were so well supported. Everyone was so on it, weren't they? Like, everyone was just into bands and proper music and proper musicians. But it did sort of, obviously, you've mentioned the real sort of start, some of the early sort of influence. But you played in a band, that used a sausage term for a name, Oi Oi Savaloy.
Yeah.
And I never heard that. But what I did hear is it was, although a very sort of quick thing, you were amazing as a unit, as a collective creative offering, and you won loads of like the square things and, take people back to that, because there'll be some people really interested to know your thoughts on that, if you can fucking remember.
Well, that was very early on. That was as my school band was fizzling out. I was at college by then, and there was basically our college course just consisted of you had to get together in a band and then write a set and do a gig at the end of the term, and you got a college diploma for doing this. It was just like, I'm in. I'll do that. Yeah, we just wrote some... To be honest, the songs, for the most part, were quite shit.
Yeah.
There was a couple of songs that had a little bit more to them. But we found this name, Oi Oi Savaloy, and we went with that, and we recorded like an intro tape, which was kind of like this sort of like Germanic Viking type sort of like chant that just went Oi Oi Savaloy, Oi Oi Savaloy, and it was just all these voices like oh, and for some reason we played it at the start of the gigs, and we were nutters on stage, and it just sort of caught the interest of the crowd really, and wherever we went, we had big crowds, and it was good. Not that we went far; it was mostly the square. But
I did hear you repeat performer.
Yeah, we played a bit in Epping and maybe Stortford. I don't know, but it was a very insular thing. But it was, for a little while. It was. I mean, still to this day. Well, not that the square's there anymore, but the biggest crowd I ever played in front of was the square playing as Oi Oi Savaloy, and it was the final, I think, of the 1992 rock contest there. And someone has got this on video. I think Dan and Claire, who now live in New Zealand, have got this on video. I did a stage dive, and the room was so packed that I just went around the whole room.
Wicked.
And then was put back on the stage, you know, and it was great fun.
What a fantastic moment, man!
Yeah.
You know, because that, like, at that age, do you know what I mean? You've been growing up on all those kind of tunes, and to sort of be there after you've sort of progressed from the complete adolescence, you've got something, you've got the energy in front of you, you've got the energy on stage to actually pop a proper stage dive and to, do you know what I mean? To go crowd surfing.
It's not like, you know, I ever really played anywhere huge, but for me, if you played the Square in Harlow, I'm talking about, which sadly got knocked down, it was just such a great venue. I'm pretty much every band I ever played in, I played at the Square.
Yeah.
You know, multiple times in some of the bands.
Yeah.
And it
was a bit of a mecca for this area, wasn't it? Really,
Yeah.
There, the Junction, and the, you know, if you were getting into London, but yeah, the Square, yeah, it's got fond memories for so many people. Often the lead singer is regarded as a bit of a diva.
I am.
The emotional driving force at the wheel of decisions, albeit harnessing that fire, leads towards the most magnificent creative outpourings. It can really capture the tunes of the times, but at some point, to fully excavate the most magnificent stories locked deep inside, we need to leave the ego at the door, allow our true self to boldly enter the room. And it's my belief that this is undoubtedly the most likely pathway to enrich your most valuable asset, your true you. Have you transcended the ego-free version of yourself and grasped you firmly with a clearer clarity? And how do you prefer to explore your creative passion now?
Well, I think I probably, as a younger man, probably took myself a little bit too seriously at times. And I don't do that at all anymore. I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and for some reason, I was always looking for approval, for validation, you know, and I think after, a few years of therapy, I know probably the reasons behind that, but I can truly say now that I know who I am, warts and all. I'm not a terrible person, I don't think. So I've made peace with myself. So I still have moments where I'm like, I'm so useless. Why haven't I done that today? Why haven't I done this? I'm so lazy, blah, blah, but...
Positive affirmations, the better story inside your head instead of the worst story. That's often the case, isn't it? We sort of dwell on the negative narrative that's flying around. But if you can pick out those positive sentences and like sort of validate, like you're saying, like the better part of you, and just be a bit more content, things seem better, don't they?
Well, I think, just going back to music as well on this, before Houston 500, the pressure was, we want to be famous. We want to be a fucking massive rock band, and all about the songs and people have very different ideas about what directions bands should go in sometimes, even people in the same band. And I think we had a few issues there. But it was the pressure of writing songs, certainly towards the end for me, became a bit of an issue, and I started to get writer's block. But, fast forward to now, and I'm making music because I just want to make music, I want to do this now. I want to keep doing this until I die.
Yeah, man.
And just keep writing and writing and writing, hopefully with Reg until the end of time.
Yeah. And
just release music, maybe go and do a few gigs. I want it to be the best it can be. But there's no pressure there. There's no sort of like a train coming down the tracks going, right, this has got to happen now, but just doing it for fun.
Yeah, man, you've consolidated your creativity. You've taken your worldly wisdoms that you've collected, and now you're trying to impart the bits of you that are expressive, that come free-flowing, man, like real, authentic tunes. I think that's got to be fundamentally like the birthplace of the best stuff that you'll do. So... Like I expect great things.
There's still an element of ego there, because obviously I want to write songs and I would like people to hear the songs. I don't really care how many people hear the songs, If my friends hear them and they're like, oh yeah, that's really good, and I'd be like, yeah, I think so. I've enjoyed doing it, That's enough for me.
I mean, to talk a hit rate, one person you respect, one person's like listens to your tune and they turn around and they like it. I mean, that's validation in itself. And if then they say to their mate, who maybe know you, maybe don't, listen to this, man, this is really cool. And then the critique is, I really like that. Two people like what you do. You're not chasing your ego anymore.
No.
Exactly. I think I'm actually really excited as well because I know how good some of those songs were. So I know what you've got, their capabilities. And now if you can put that with that refreshed sort of oversight, it's the written word then performed particularly with the type of style that I remember that you had, where I don't know where you'll go. I'm really excited to listen, actually.
It's not a massive departure.
Okay, cool, man.
if I'm being completely honest, I mean, it's, obviously it's a different musician, so you get different flavour there. But, Reg is a massive rock guy. He's an incredibly good guitarist. He's released albums before himself. I've done a lot of metal stuff. Not that we're metal at all, really. I think it's not. If I was to say it sounded like anything I'd done before, I would say it's a little bit of a melting pot between Houston 500 and Dirty Harry.
Oh yeah, Dirty Harry.
But with a few extra new flavours sort of thrown in. But because I'm singing and I'm writing the melodies, and it's not a massive departure. It's still a rock sound. So.
Yeah, just really what our era likes, isn't it? Yeah. we kind of want to make sure there's a lead guitar, a bass guitar, some drums, and some pretty heavy vocals. Love listening to the musically related stuff, but this is like slightly different. You're wearing a Star Wars t-shirt there, man. So this is probably a little bit more relating to the cosmos and the technical innovations that you're seeing coming through. Perhaps in the form of comics, hero superpowers. How far do you think the human race can envisage more realistic super types of humans with all this AI at our fingertips and the desire to reach out further than ever before? I know you're not Elon Musk.
Yeah, I'm not Stephen Hawkins. No. I think science seems to sort of throw stuff up that you've never really thought is possible. And even some people say like sci-fi sort of helps to push science forward, and that there is an element of truth in that. A lot of scientists are big fans of things like, Star Trek and Star Wars. More probably Star Trek for scientists, to be honest, because it's obviously set in a human future. But, things like the tricorder from Star Trek, where they sort of hold that thing up on your body and it goes, things like that are starting to exist now, like the communicator, iPhones. But, sort of nanotechnology or nanotechnology, however you say it, and AI, I mean, who knows?
I know you're so keen, like, with your sci-fi and stuff like that, and I wonder you still have that sort of real sort of affection towards it, if you've got the time for it. Yeah,
I'm still a massive Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a Trekkie as well. Not huge Trekkie. I do like Trek. I mean, for me, the current thing is just Marvel hitting it out of the park with everything they do. And it's especially brilliant for me because I grew up reading all the comics and I love the comics. And to see these characters being on the screen now and being done so amazingly well and lifting elements from the stories from the comics and making them their own thing, I'm fully on board. Yeah, I'm still a geek, basically, is the answer to that.
I like it. I like, because to be fair, you introduced me, not to my love of Star Wars, because I love Star Wars too. That was my next door neighbours, and giving me all their toys, Millennium Falcons and all sorts of stuff. They were so kind. But it was more that you were the sci-fi dude in the house. Like you made that point, and we watched all sorts of stuff, like repeatedly, weekend after weekend. There'd be something getting on there talking about it, and I can't think of you, Gravy Davy, without thinking of those types of things. And it makes me think, if you were maybe an alter ego or a superhero yourself, Dave, what would you most desire to be with all of the trimmings?
Actually, my son asks me this all the time. Dad, if you could have a superpower, which would it be? You can have 3, choose 3. And he's always given me scenarios like this. Super strength would be amazing. Flight would be amazing. And, super speed. I'd still be fucking late for everything, but super speed would be amazing.
It won't help you keep a deadline, but
I was only 3 minutes late today.
You're right, man. But you phoned. The courtesy was there.
Yeah,
super speed. Yeah, I don't have the same conversations with my girls because they're not really into it. It's like, what princess do you want to be? What's your favourite?
You always say Princess Leia.
Oh, mate, I've got a wicked picture of Princess Leia done by a tattoo artist.
Have you?
My God. Yeah, when we can reopen and you can come at my house, it is a banging piece of art. And Leia's completely covered with a shoulder piece of Darth Vader and the story depicting with all this really great collaboration through tattoos, revealing all of the stories. Mate, anyway.
Who was it who had all the Star Wars tattoos?
Cookie,
that's it.
the man who, on one of our fated parties...
Oh, my God. Yeah, I remember that. He just came round to get... He went to Tesco's to get some cigarettes.
Yeah.
He was at a wedding reception with his girlfriend, the little blonde girl.
Yeah, well, I won't mention her, but yeah.
Yeah, and he went to Tesco's because our house was next to Tesco's.
Yeah.
And we were having a party.
We were always having a party.
Yeah, but there was a party that night.
It was a proper party, yeah.
Big party.
It was a weekender.
Was it your 21st?
I can't remember if it was that. I think it was our 21st,
Your
actually.
21st was crazy.
Yeah,
we'll come back to that in a minute. But he was all suited and booted. He'd been at a wedding reception. He'd gone to Tesco's to get some cigarettes, and he just popped in for 5 minutes to say hello, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he was there for 2 days.
2 days. So anyone sort of listening in, like, I'm a barber, but Cookie he was always the tattooed barber, and I worked with him for many years, and he's an outstanding chap, and he is a massive fan of Star Wars, so him and Dave got on like a house on fire. That particular moment, there was a fire, and he was caught putting imaginary VHS videotapes into this and watching whatever he may have been watching in the screen that he was seeing. But anyway... the weird and wonderful world. Oh, God. I sat next to him. The guy, I love that guy. I still see him to this day. He's a fantastic fella. Love him to bits and pieces. So yeah, we mentioned, like, obviously you dropped another barber in there. You know, like, so I scavenge around that barber's chair for like my creativity, gathering my observations. With that dimly set awareness, it allows me to creatively collect and harvest my inner feelings and awareness. That's when the pen hits the paper for me. I'm able to write, but not only around my chair, my written download hits me when my mind is at the most present, and I'm focused on steering away from the negative patterns of conversation that exist in all of us. It's not to say that negativity doesn't lead to creativity, that's not true, but my deeper connection to a freer place inside my own mind gives me a chance to show a total reflection when I can cultivate with more influential language to then share my conversations that then follow. So songwriting is and can be the most intimate way to put across your own special message. So just how do you get inside that real conscious state? I think we sort of glossed over that a little bit, and sort of to bring that real creative, compelling sort of story, your deeper thoughts. Do you sort of like imagine, like past things? Because I know I just think of the person. So you were coming here today. So I just started thinking about you and visualizing you and looking at your picture, and then it all just spews out of me like, it's violent. And I can't keep up with it.
I do tend to make people violent. I don't know why.
Is it sort of, are you finding like a darker sort of thoughts or a happier thoughts, or where do you find that real,
A lot of the material that I started to write when I started writing again was following the separation and divorce from my ex, and there will be songs on the album that do address that part of my life. At one point, it was like I said to Reg, this is a concept album, it's a divorce album,
Taylor Swift.
He loves Taylor Swift, but he's got this real thing for like female singers. Like, he loves Taylor Swift. He loves, his favourite is
Miley Cyrus.
Miley.
I knew he was going to say that. Yeah, they're really good, man. They really put.
Miley's sort of carving her own sort of path, isn't she? Drawing on all kinds of different influences. I mean, she doesn't massively do it for me, but he loves her. Mm-hmm. He loves her. But anyway, yeah, generally I find it hard to write about darker stuff. I don't know why, but if you look back at all the old Houston 500 stuff, it was very much about sort of bad experiences with certain people, but also drug influenced stuff. And Houston 500, it was all very much dirty rock and roll. And actually, after having written about 4 or 5 divorce songs, I just sort of thought, right, okay, we need a party song. So I consciously sort of sat down. We just started to write something that was a bit more fun. So we've done some stuff like that as well.
Like less therapy, more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we got some party stuff on there as well. Yeah, divorce and parties.
So if you,
that's probably what we'll call it, divorce and parties.
Or divorce
party.
I suppose it's a good time to mention if you two are going through a sad departure of your relationship, then maybe Dave has written a tune that you may well be able to sort of help heal the inner hurt. If not, get to track number 5, because it sounds like that's where the fun starts.
That's the party, yeah.
I mean, life, man, it's not always great, is it? It's got its funny way of tilting on us and sending us on tough journeys. And I think, that it's an area of conversation, where I tend to not like to have taboos. I really love to let people explore powerful conversations, because it is a part of therapy. It's not that this is necessarily therapy, but the art of conversation, I think there lies the cure. So on that note, is there, when you're talking about tough journeys, obviously you've talked about divorce, like for you, like in your voyage so far, what ship would you have rather not have sailed on so far with your experiences? What's been the hardest thing that you've had to deal with and get through?
Other than the divorce.
Or if it is that, it doesn't matter, because it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, the divorce was horrific.
It's wrenching.
It was horrific. I mean, nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, and it broke me. It really broke me. I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted it, I loved my wife, but things change, and decisions are made about whether you want to continue with your business or not, or, not just go out and get a proper job. But I think ultimately I made the right decision about the business and decided to continue with it. And it's not been easy, especially with, because I work in travel. So that's been difficult for the last sort of year. But, the divorce was so horrific, and we really did show each other the very worst of each other while we were getting divorced. And, there's no going back. And it was very acrimonious for a couple of years, but we're now in a really good place. And, we've got three beautiful children. We had 2 children together. I've got Sam, he's my son. He's 12, coming up for 13. Scarlett is 11. But when I first got together with Maria, my ex-wife, we had Ellie, who was 3 years old when I met Maria from a previous relationship. And, for me, Ellie is one of my kids. Mm-hmm. She's 22 this month. So I've been part of her life for most of her life. And I love all 3 of them equally. In fact, when either Sam or Scarlett goes, "Dad, who's your favourite?" I always go, "Oh, Ellie."
Yeah, she's my favourite.
Yeah, she's my favourite. She's not even really yours. I was like, don't care. She's much nicer than both of you. But, they take it in good spirits. They're proper little comedians, my 2. All 3 of them. But so, yeah, that was, and it's recent as well. It's in the last sort of 4 years. And it was probably particularly difficult to deal with because my mum passed away in the January. And then in the August, I discovered that my marriage was over.
Yeah, tough
it was a very, very difficult time. So I didn't really have much time to process the death of my mum before the divorce or the breakup started to happen. That's been the roughest time of my life. But I'm happy to say there's definitely scars, of course there will be, but I've come out the other side, and I'm pretty happy with the way life is at the moment.
I think by the time you get to a certain age in life, don't you? You have collected a lot of wounds, but you mentioned the word scar. That comes after it's healed. You can't forget what created it, because you look down and the famous scene in Lethal Weapon where they're sort of showing each other scars. Well, each of us has a scar. There's a story to tell about them, and it's just like the tapestry of the lesson of the life that we've lived. And
yeah.
It's when you can look at that scar and it doesn't open up, or it doesn't hurt you when it opens up. You understand it. You've got time introspectively to sort of just take a look at it and see something beneficial to you. You've grabbed hold of something, you've learned something, and you also tapped into rekindling old relationships with your old mates, and going out and doing things. It does feel like a similar sort of thing that's happening to a lot of people. I don't know whether this is like historically the same, but more and more so now, like people are, the conversation's king, man, isn't it? Surely with the world and day and age of like the digital sort of interaction, it feels more wholesome just to get back, isn't it? And like get to understand someone, and it doesn't have to be living in people's pockets, because you get older, you don't have that worry anymore, do you? But it's about getting that sense of togetherness back, and yeah, I'm enjoying having you here.
Good. Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
I think the thing is, it's like when, perhaps when the world reopens again, it's about, like, you've got music coming. There's loads of music going to come. What better thing? Like me and DC were talking about it yesterday. It's when venues open, when there's live performance, when there's gigs, that the tiers of life underneath it have all successively got through that initial opening. The world sort of got a better collective idea of how we're going to cope in life. Everyone's hankering to hug each other and stuff. And yes, we need to have some hesitation until, it seems like clearer and what have you. But we've all missed it, mate. So that music is going to bring us all back out together to enjoy and experience together. And it's so important. So I'm not intimating that I feel that you should follow my lead with physical activity, David. I know you can handle my slight giggle on that front. Dave's a swell fella.
Yeah, you see, I've always struggled with my weight, really. But after the divorce, as I said, I started to go to the pub.
Yeah.
And also, I have my kids 50% of the time. Mm-hmm. So on the nights that I don't have my kids, I've got very lazy, not all the time, but I've probably eaten more takeaways in the last 2 or 3 years than I probably should have. And I've drunk a lot of beer. I mean, I was drinking, 5 or 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week sometimes. Yeah. Mostly in the pub. I joked to Julian, my landlord, I basically pay his mortgage on a monthly basis. But
he probably goes, no, you don't, Dave. But you're paying a lot of the interest, pal.
Probably. But I sort of said last year to everyone, right, I'm going to have a year off the booze. Because I did actually, just before Maria and I split up, I didn't drink for about 20 months. Mm-hmm. Just one New Year's Eve, I just said, I'm going to just have January off. And then I got to the end of January, I was just like, actually, it's quite nice not drinking. And that went on for, nearly 2 years. It wasn't until, things turned to shit and I started drinking again. But when I did start drinking again, I started to drink hard. And of course, drinking a pint of beer is like eating 6 slices of bread or something. It's, there's a lot of calories in beer.
And you need to offset that properly, don't you?
Yeah. But I didn't have any time to exercise because I was drinking too much. And drinking on a treadmill is problematic, So yeah, I was drinking. I didn't really develop a problem, but I think had I continued to drink the way that I did, I probably would have. So I was starting to feel shit, and I started to get pains in my chest, and I was just like, hang on, it's time to stop. So I haven't actually stopped drinking, but whereas I was drinking sort of 5, 6, 7 times a week, so far this year, there's been 7 occasions in all where I've actually had a drink. So not bad. We're in the middle of April.
A lot of people have turned to the bottle, man. I've got my own experiences. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing at times, but the good thing is that you recognise it and you're like, right, cool, let's move on. It sort of makes me think, like, obviously you looked at that, naturally quite a lot of us will turn in the darker moments to the bottle, but knowing that we were going into this lockdown, I know you said your life wasn't particularly too different because you've been working from home for a long time and stuff like that. But did you sort of think, right, I want to set myself a little bit of a goal, like perhaps with fitness or with a mindful practice?
No. No, I didn't. No.
So it doesn't surprise me, but it's because I think the thing is, perhaps what you've done without setting the goal is you've been very creative and you've started writing.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever written as much music in my entire life as I am right now. I mean, it's just pouring out of me. So you could say that's.
I did say. And
you did say. Saying, yeah, yes. You were right. You were right. Yeah. So yeah, that is something that has sort of changed specifically over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I don't really want to get up on stage until I've lost a couple more stone, really. I mean, I have actually lost weight since I stopped drinking so much, believe it or not. But I've got a little way to go. But I'm a swimmer. I love swimming. That's my thing. I used to get down to Lord Butler in my lunch break, swim a mile, and get back to work within an hour. And that's my thing. That's my superpower. Going back to superpowers is I can swim.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I like the swimming. Have you been swimming throughout this lockdown? Have you continued?
No, there's nowhere because the pools are closed.
What about the river, man?
Yeah, I know. I see on Facebook.
Come on, buddy. I'm keen. I'm
just so out of shape. I'm worried if I get into water that cold, I'll have a heart attack instantly.
It's about nut deep to start with. It is possible, and it is exhilarating.
Yeah,
and I'd be more than happy to at some point. So this is.
I'm not going to set an exact day and time right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I will come for a little river swim with you.
Yeah, it's really fun, even if you just sit in there and do a bit of breathing. And the thing is, without realising, it is a mindful practice to go swimming because of the nature of trying to breathe. And then you talk about the songwriting. So without really knowing it, you are actually performing like really good mindful practices for yourself. Even having this conversation, it might jog you to think, actually, to dial into that more might even help the creativity flow even further. Come to the stream with me, my friend.
Come to the stream with me.
Well, we've covered largely your creative performance retrospective look at your background, but man, you haven't smashed that mic up in ages, so excuse the pun. But let's dive a little bit deeper into your underwater world, Dave, and the krakens that you've found beneath the surface. What are you up to these days, son?
Well, I started my own business in 2013. I was working for a scuba diving magazine. It was the big red building next to the train station in Audley End. It was in there. Publishing company was based there. And I worked there for a scuba diving magazine. Had that job for about 7 years, but they closed that building down and relocated my magazine to Wokingham. And I had to commute a couple of days a week and then work from home. Then sort of discovered that they actually didn't want people working from home. I got a bit of a payout and used that money to set up my own business. So that we launched a website. Actually, we started with an app, but it's all based on scuba diving. So we launched an app. While we were doing the app, we launched a website, and that was in 2013. And that website to this day still exists and is our flagship sort of media platform. That's scubaverse.com. And it's effectively an online magazine promoting diving and marine conservation. And we do competitions. There's monthly underwater photo contests and video contests. We get people all over the world, but our biggest audience now is the US. So more people visit the site from the US than any other country. Then it's the UK. And we started publishing a quarterly printed magazine in 2018 called Dive Travel Adventures, which we distribute throughout the UK and Ireland. It's available to pick up free from dive centres all over the UK and Ireland. And this year, lockdown, we sort of thought, right, okay, well, once everyone's allowed to travel again, it's going to go nuts. So I've actually invested in the company and we've launched 9 new websites. One's a snorkeling website, all about snorkeling. The other 8 are all what I call my Dive Travel Adventures websites. So there's Caribbean Dive Adventures, Asia Dive Adventures, European Dive Adventures, and so on. And each website sort of focuses on a particular region of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, the community sort of, within any niche, obviously the explosion to search underneath the waves has become massive with amazing sort of platform programs from mine favourite hero of all time, Sir David Attenborough. And I know we sort of glossed into the Star Wars and how we can sort of galactically look towards the distant sort of universe, but we got it right here down on Earth, haven't we? It's amazing what's what's there to uncover. We talked about even just going into a stream in the middle of February, -2 degrees, I might add. Very cold.
Well, wait till it's warmed up a bit.
Small fish, my friend. But with all of that, that underwater commitment, do you actually dive?
Yeah, I can dive, yeah. I actually haven't been diving for a few years due to circumstance, really. I mean, I basically run the day-to-day business stuff. I've got an editor, Jane, who's brilliant, and Caroline, my deputy editor, who are absolutely brilliant. But I have a sort of a stable, if you want, of underwater photojournalists.
Photogs.
Yeah, and they go all over the world for me, and we get the tourist boards to pay for their flights, and then you'll have a resort put them up for free because you're writing about their resort, so they want that sort of attention. And then we publish sort of lovely big 10, 11, 12 page articles in the magazine, lovely underwater photography, do some blogs on the website, it's all shared on the social media, on the newsletter. So they're really happy. And then, hopefully they invest in some advertising off the back of that as well, which is how we survive. So yeah, in answer to your question, I don't really go diving much myself. I have been diving. I've had some great experiences. I was diving in the Red Sea, Egyptian Red Sea, and I was really lucky. I came around the side of this reef. It was a tall sort of wall type reef, and a big turtle eating off the reef. And as I came around the side, it sort of broke off, and it came round and it was beside me. And for about 10 minutes, I was just swimming along,
so cool,
under the water next to I could have reached out and sort of just patted it on the shell. I was that close. We were just swimming along together for about 10 minutes. We got back to the boat and everyone was just like, "You lucky bastard." And on the same trip, this amazing experience, this dive was just so boring. Nothing happened. And then as we were sort of coming up to the surface, this manta just swam straight.
They're amazing, aren't they?
Which, you don't see them in the Red Sea all that often. And this was just off the shore as well. So it was an amazing sort of thing. But you just, this thing just like a Star Destroyer. So, just bring it back to Star Wars because that's what I do.
It is, yeah.
So, but it's going above you slowly and you're just like, oh my God, that is so amazing, It's
great to connect underwater, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to sort of witness into the environment. It's such an important place to go and sort of really see yourself, isn't it? See with your own eyes.
I'd recommend diving to anyone that has any sort of sense of adventure, because you can see, I've dived wrecks, some of the wrecks. There's a wreck in the Red Sea called the Thistlegorm, and it's an old Allied ship which was bombed by Nazi planes, and it sunk. And this thing was carrying supplies to the Allied forces, and it had inside flatbed trucks with motorbikes on top of them, had 2 locomotives on the deck, and this whole thing went down. And I've been in and around that, and it's just like you're swimming around, there's motorbikes, and there are huge shoals of fish, and you've got the light coming through the cracks of the wreck, illuminating these huge shoals of fish in these rooms in the wreck, and it's an amazing experience. I recommend it to anyone.
It's and also
you're going to have to come diving.
Yeah. It's like putting an anti-gravity suit on. Well, I actually nearly died underwater on practically my first ever diving experience, and that was a mistake largely through my own ignorance, but a complete lack of care and attention to detail, but mainly due to a lot of Zambuca the night before and a few Italian dudes with a really wet bag of cocaine. Nothing to do with me,
no.
But obviously that's a different time. But yeah, I've dived a lot. I love the water. I surf. I still surf to this day. I've booked up a surf trip. I haven't dived a lot, but because I can hold my breath for quite well, I kind of figured with, even with a snorkel, you've got access to sort of the first 5-10 metres, more like the first 5 realistically.
Oh,
and you can
amazing.
Hang down for a good, I've had some really cool experiences in that way. And it's not always like the big impressive things, although I'm lucky to say I've seen quite a few of them. Sometimes it's just like the really detailed little moments with, like a seahorse or a type of coral that's just absolutely packed with colour and, the life that's coming around it. It's like, I think because you've got the clarity, if you've got good underwater visibility, you've got that glass over your eyes, haven't you? The sound comes in on you.
Yeah.
You've got that breathing. So if you don't freak out and you ride with it, it is like a bit of a sort of a, it's like a bit of an underwater odyssey that you can really dial in because you've got that sort of tunnel vision. So yeah, I agree with Dave. Get out there, get under the water. We're islanders as well. We should be comfortable near the sea.
There's a lot of great diving around the UK as well. I did my advanced open water course off the west coast of Ireland.
Have you ever thought about doing a surf related? Or is it too obscure for you?
Briefly, and it's not off the table actually. And in fact, if I did do it, my cousins are huge surfers, but they both live in Australia. But,
when you say huge, do you mean like big? or just really big fans of it?
They're just not like me. No. They're both like buffed surfer dudes.
Yeah, surfer dudes normally are buffed.
But and actually, one of my cousins, Christian, he's made a mint out of solar paneling. He just wants to surf. So I sort of mentioned something to him in the past, but he was a bit like, I don't know if that's what he really wants to do. If he wants to do it with me, maybe he just thought, that's a good idea, I'll do that.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of well-documented stuff, and with, the age of, internet and, the ability to sort of track and trace everything, it's so much easier to see these things. Like, naturally the waves break everywhere there's a shoreline. If there's a good open piece of sea, we can now forecast when there's going to be waves. I used to surf the winter at Sea Pooling and Cromer, for fuck's sake, getting changed in a car park, in the middle of February. It's ridiculous to think of it for a 2-second ride, but I'm now booked to go to, and I've got to give it a shout out, Bristol Wave Garden, which is a human-developed lake. So a site where they've picked like the topography of the land site that sits underneath it. They generate waves. You have like a session, so you can go and buy an hour's worth of waves. You can go and learn safely with tuition from people walking alongside you as you're doing it. So it doesn't have to be this big fear thing of going out with all the, being this little grom or an old grom for a lot of people. Most people get a bit older and they want to surf. Because I've had the baptism of the lineup I've had many a times. And it can be frightening in the water. So anyway, if anyone... it's like, I really want to try it. Like, I haven't been there yet, but I will talk about it with my friend who goes with me, hopefully, or my brother if he comes. But yeah, Bristol Wave Garden. Just generally, get out. Look forward to having a bit of an adventure, Dave. I think it's the key thing we're saying here, isn't it?
Yeah. Like,
engage with being in the environment, seeing the environment, supporting different people that are putting together, all this information. It's costly, isn't it? So we need to exchange some tokens to keep these things going. Otherwise, we won't know about it all.
Yeah.
I just want to spin a different kind of question to you, Dave.
Yeah.
Just to push something slightly random at you, I want you to pick one of these areas to chat about. And it might be a personal story, could just be an observation, maybe even something relative to now. Have a go. So what does this mean to you? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
What does... I don't know. That is an interesting question.
You could pick any topic.
Out of the three?
Out of the three. You can pick all of them if you've got enough stories. We haven't got enough time.
We talked about rock and roll. Drugs.
Go on, man.
Don't do them, kids.
Why not? Exactly. Don't we take drugs every morning? We have coffee?
Sex instead. And always rock and roll.
Thanks, man.
There you go.
There you go. No, that's it. Perfect. That was your thought of the moment. That's exactly what I wanted to extract from you. We mentioned like the past. We know that you and DC, good old boy, you have a bit of history there that dates back. And he was in here and he was actually, as I said to you before, he was really pleased to hear that you were coming on and he was smiles to hear your name. And him knowing that you were in for a chat today, I had to name drop you. He's very good at name dropping big stars, but I name dropped you. Naturally, there's a past, there's a present, and there's a future to us all. But he seemed like he'd be extremely happy to hang out and have a laugh at the old times. I will add that he was really happy to hear your name and that you were connecting here as well. I wanted to ask him if there was a question, because you were coming in, and he said, ask Dave about what actually happened one particularly messy gig you and the band you were both in. You were playing in Germany when you started your day off by brushing your teeth with vodka.
Oh, God, I think he's getting a little bit confused there. I don't remember brushing my teeth with vodka, but Jim Bird, he was playing guitar for us at the time in Dirty Harry, and Jim was brilliant on that particular trip because I don't think he drank anything other than vodka or beer for the whole week we were there. He ate food a little bit, I think, but for the most part, he just got up, and it was actually him, I believe, who brushed his teeth with vodka. I might have just done it just to see what it was like.
Good start to the day?
Probably not, but I don't really remember. But Jim on that trip was brilliant. I mean, he was just such an example of how not to look after yourself. And and would just take off his clothes at any opportunity to take off his clothes and climb stuff. You know, there was a big industrial sort of unit, and he somehow found himself at the top of that naked, sort of like just go, hey, like that. And everyone's like, hey, you know. But yeah, I don't really remember brushing my teeth with vodka.
But that was the story.
I think it was Jim.
Yeah, Jim, the naked guitarist.
Jim Burrs, yeah. From
he sounds like a fun geezer to sort of get in a naked podcast. Who knows? Well, thanks for that, David. Perhaps like now is a great time to reflect on today, our chat, and maybe to dive inside yourself and sort of try and sort of think if there's like a takeaway from that you could impart for some budding young songwriters or newly formed bands or wannabe parentrepreneurs, as I so call people like yourself, with all your gathered experience that may help someone else out. Is there a lesson that you've learned that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say to anyone that's just starting out, don't ever listen to anyone that tells you you can't do it. Because you can do it. If you've got a little bit of talent, doesn't have to be much talent, you can write songs, or you're an actor, or anything like that. All these things that normal people will tell you, you'll never make it happen. Don't ever give up. Don't let other people tell you you can't make it. Strong man.
Before we head off back to our current existence, you have new material in the locker. So how can the listeners tune in when that's ready to come with you, keep up to date with you, both in your business and your creativity, Dave? I imagine there will be some excited fans keen to follow after listening to you, learning a little bit more deeper and knowing that the pen is back on the paper. So can you list your social media addresses, your Facebook pages?
Nothing like that's been put together yet, but I guess I could, if anyone's listening to this, that means they're a fan of you. So I guess we could come back when the time is ready. And we should have everything in place by then, maybe play some of the tracks.
Yeah, man. So a bit of a review.
Yeah.
And like a review.
But we'll be here, so you'll have to lie and say you enjoy it.
I've had a little sneaky peek, mate. So I've got my.
I played you one of the tracks.
And I actually really liked it. So and it really, really resonated with me. And I literally knew exactly who was it. There was that style, that sense of you in it, and it felt really right. So I'm excited to listen. And yeah, actually, hopefully all my mates will want to listen to me. Oh, maybe my mates won't want to listen to me jargle on any further. But if they do, there'll be some areas where we can sort of tune into what all of our older friends, our other connections, as we reconnect, we can start to refollow and get back together and meet up, because there's the bit after the gig. It's called the after party, isn't it? Isn't that quite good fun? I've heard.
It can be. It can be.
Listen, brother, I'm completely happy that you decided to come on here. Support me with this endeavour of a podcast. It's actually brilliant, and we've had great chemistry. We always did. Me and you and a few of the other tasty townies of the day, we were shackled up in that house called the Wild Hedges. There were some very, very wild and expressive times where sobriety was a word we'd never heard of. With the sort of revisiting the Wild Hedges, is there, like, for the lads that might tune in or the ladies that might tune in that sort of lived there, is there one little nugget, one little story that instantly pops to mind?
I do remember your 21st birthday party, and every time I think about that house, the first thing I think about is Boner jumping out of your bedroom.
It was
Jim's bedroom window onto the bouncy castle, and then everyone going, "That's a great idea," and everyone started to do it.
Yeah.
But Boner was, as I remember,
I think it was Nick Collins actually.
Was it Nick Collins?
Yeah, because he was an absolute nutter.
He was a nutter.
Yeah, but I think he's still like playing some tunes, man, and doing bits and pieces. Yeah,
because he was DJ, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great party. I suppose
at the same party, I was on fire and didn't notice. And I can't remember who it was that I was in. Someone introduced me to someone, and it's someone I now know to this day. But they were like, "Hey man, you're on fire." I was just like, "Oh yeah."
That's a proper party, isn't it? Let's face it, that's a proper party. Listen, bro, we've both got the rest of our lives to reminisce. naturally, it sounds like you're going to be coming back on, so we can sort of use this as a little bit of an anchoring point. So we've got something to tether ourselves to, another boat. We can have another bob around and talk about lots of different things. Like I really want to talk to you about the environment and like some of the things that you've learned through Scubaverse. Fascinated, my friend. And we can talk about how we got on with our swim and what creativity came from this period of time.
Sounds good.
So I'm looking forward to chewing the fat with you again. So please take your bow. You've been super interesting, man. You've been a brilliant guest. I'm galactically grateful, and I thank you ultimately with the universal praise, Dave Alexander. Thanks for coming here today, man.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure. It's been great to catch up. It's been awesome.
Peace,
love,
power to your day, man.
Love you, man.
The PodBarber is a That Media and Design production, with Mickey at the mic and Howie at the controls. Just search the PodBarber on social and let's get connected.